She knows exactly what you think of her, and she has never posted a single photo. Not because she is shy, not because she is insecure, but because she sees something in you that you cannot see in yourself yet. If you have ever met a woman like this, or if you are a woman like this, stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I am about to break down will completely change the way you understand silence, power, and the hidden psychology of the most perceptive people walking this planet right now. Drop the word seen in the comments right now if you want to understand why the most powerful women you will ever meet are also the quietest ones online. There is a woman you know. Maybe she is a friend. Maybe she is someone you follow but never quite see. Maybe she is you. She is warm. She is incredibly perceptive. When you are around her, you feel understood in ways you cannot fully explain. But you have noticed something. She does not post photos of herself. No selfies, no mirror shots, no birthday pictures, no vacation photos with her face front and center. And at some point, you probably wondered why. Maybe you assumed she was private. Maybe you thought she lacked confidence. Maybe some part of your brain filed her away as someone who just does not care about social media. And every single one of those assumptions would be wrong. Because what she is doing is not avoidance. It is not insecurity dressed up as preference. What she is doing is one of the most psychologically sophisticated moves a person can make in a world that is drowning in performance and noise. And once I walk you through the inner architecture of why she operates this way, you will never look at a woman's silence the same way again. Let us start at the beginning. Let us start with what an empath actually is. Not the way the internet defines it, not the watered-down version that gets thrown around in wellness circles like a personality badge, but the real thing. A female empath is a woman who processes the emotional and psychological states of the people around her at a depth that most humans are not even aware is possible. She does not just notice that you are sad, she feels the specific texture of your sadness. She does not just observe that you are uncomfortable. She tracks the micro movements in your face, the shift in your breathing, the millisecond delay in your smile, and she registers all of it before you have said a single word. This is not a gift she chose. It is a wiring she was born with. Research on high sensitivity in humans suggests that certain individuals have a nervous system that processes sensory and emotional data at a significantly deeper level than average. They notice more, they feel more, they absorb more. And the result of living inside that kind of nervous system is that the world is always incredibly loud. Now imagine being that woman. Imagine walking through life where every room is a symphony of emotional information, where every conversation carries 10 layers beneath the words being spoken, where you can feel the tension between two strangers across a coffee shop, where someone's fake smile lands on your nervous system like a small alarm going off. Imagine living inside that level of perception every single day. What do you do with that? You learn to manage your exposure. You learn to control your environment. You become incredibly selective about what you let in and what you put out. And that selectivity, that deep biological need to manage what you expose yourself to, is the first thread of why she does not post her photos online. Because here is what nobody tells you about social media, and what empaths figured out long before researchers caught up. When you post a photo of yourself, you are not just sharing an image. You are opening a channel. You are inviting energy, attention, judgment, projection, desire, envy, criticism, and adoration all at once. You are essentially standing in the middle of a room with the lights on, with no walls, with every door open, and you are saying, "Here I am. Come find me." For most people, that feels exciting. The dopamine hit of likes, the social validation, the sense of connection. They post and they wait and they refresh and they feel something. And for those people, the trade is worth it. But for a female empath, that same open channel does not feel exciting. It feels like being electrocuted slowly, because she does not just receive the likes, she receives the intention behind every single one of them. She feels the difference between genuine warmth and performative support. She senses when someone is looking at her photo and feeling something that has nothing to do with her actual self. She registers the comparison energy coming from women who wish they had what she has. She feels the projection from men who see her face and immediately begin constructing a fantasy that has nothing to do with who she actually is. She feels all of it, and she did not sign up for that. So she makes a choice, not a conscious, strategic choice in the beginning. Initially, it is just a feeling, a sense of discomfort that does not go away. A quiet internal resistance every time she is about to post something personal. And she listens to that resistance because empaths, above almost any other personality type, are wired to trust their internal signals. Over time, that quiet resistance becomes a clear boundary, and that boundary becomes a defining feature of how she moves through the world. Now, let us go deeper because the psychology here is layered, and most people only ever see the surface. There is something that happens to highly empathic women when they become visible online, and it is not something that happens to most people, at least not in the same way. When a female empath posts a photo, she does not just receive feedback from the outside world. She begins to absorb the world's perception of her into her own sense of self. She starts to see herself through other people's eyes. And because she is so sensitive to energy and perception, those external views can actually begin to overwrite her internal sense of who she is. This is called identity erosion. And it is a real psychological phenomenon that happens when highly sensitive people expose themselves to large volumes of external perception without adequate protection. The opinions, the projections, the comparisons, they do not just bounce off the surface like they might for someone with a thicker psychological skin. They seep in. They alter things. They create a kind of internal noise that makes it hard for a deeply sensitive woman to hear her own voice. And for an empath, losing access to her own internal voice is not just uncomfortable, it is catastrophic. Because her internal voice is her compass. It is how she navigates relationships, decisions, danger, and connection. It is literally how she survives in a world that constantly overwhelms her. Take that away, and she is lost. So not posting photos is not vanity in reverse. It is not false modesty. It is self-preservation at the deepest level. It is a woman protecting the most important tool she has, which is her own clear perception of herself. And now here is where it gets really interesting. The female empath who does not post her photos is not hiding from the world. She is incredibly present in the world. She shows up, she connects, she is warm and open and deeply engaged with the people in her physical life. But she has drawn a clear line between presence and performance. She knows the difference between being truly seen by someone who is actually in the room with her and being looked at by strangers who are constructing a version of her from a filtered image on a screen. She does not want to be looked at. She wants to be known. And she has understood, probably through experience, that being looked at and being known are almost always completely opposite experiences. This distinction between being looked at and being known is one of the central psychological themes in the life of every female empath, and it shapes everything about how she moves through the world. Think about the relationship she values. She is not interested in people who are impressed by her appearance. She is not drawn to attention that is based on what she looks like. She gravitates toward depth. She gravitates toward people who ask real questions, who sit with silence comfortably, who do not flinch when a conversation gets honest, who see past the surface because they are actually interested in what is underneath. She has been in relationships or friendships where someone was deeply attracted to her image, to the idea of her, to the version of her that looked a certain way or fit a certain role. And she knows exactly what that feels like. It feels hollow. It feels like standing in a room full of people and being completely alone because the thing they are in love with is not her. It is a projection. And she can feel the difference. She always can. So she creates conditions that filter for depth. One of those conditions is not offering the visual bait that attracts surface level attention. If there is nothing to look at, then only the people who are interested in what she actually has to say, how she thinks, how she makes people feel, those are the only people who stay. And those are exactly the people she wants. This is not a strategy she designed on a whiteboard. It is an organic filtering system that her psychology built to protect her and to serve her. But the effect is sophisticated whether she planned it or not. Now let us talk about the energetic cost that most people completely ignore. Every empath has what you might think of as a daily bandwidth, a finite amount of emotional and psychic energy she can spend before she becomes depleted. And unlike most people, she does not just spend energy in obvious ways. She spends energy absorbing. She spends energy processing. She spends energy feeling things that do not even belong to her. Things she picked up from the room, from the conversation, from the silence between words. By the time she gets home at the end of a normal day, she is already running on a low tank. And this is not weakness. This is the cost of operating at her level of depth and perception. The same depth that makes her an extraordinary friend, partner, listener, and healer is the same depth that leaves her exhausted in ways most people do not understand. Now add social media to that picture. Add the constant stream of opinions, reactions, comparisons, and unsolicited energy that comes with having your face public online. Add the mental overhead of knowing that people are looking at you, thinking about you, forming opinions about you in real time continuously. And you can see immediately why it would be unbearable for someone whose nervous system is already working at maximum capacity just existing in the world. She cannot afford it. Not because she is fragile, but because she knows her limits. And knowing your limits, while the whole world tells you to overstep them, is one of the most underrated forms of psychological strength that exists. There is another dimension to this that I want to explore, because it is one of the most beautiful and most misunderstood aspects of the female empath psychology. She is deeply private, not because she does not trust people in general, but because she has an acute awareness of what it costs to be known by the wrong people. She has experienced what it feels like when someone gets access to her inner world and uses it carelessly. When she opened up and the other person was not ready to receive that level of depth. When she was vulnerable and the other person confused her vulnerability for weakness. When she trusted and that trust was mishandled. Those experiences do not make her shut down. They make her more discerning. And discernment in the hands of someone this perceptive becomes almost like a superpower. She can read people quickly, not in an arrogant way, not in a judgmental way, but in a survival way. She knows within minutes of meeting someone whether they operate at a level of depth that can hold her, whether they are safe, whether they are genuine, whether there is something real underneath the performance. And because she can read people that way, she is very selective about who gets access to the deeper parts of her life. Her photos, her face, her visual presence, those feel intimate to her in a way that is hard to explain to someone who is not wired this way. They feel personal. They feel like giving someone a key to something sacred. And she is not interested in handing out keys to people who have not earned them. This is why when she does allow herself to be seen, really seen by someone she trusts, it is one of the most profound experiences that person will ever have. Because she does not give access freely. She gives it carefully. And what you receive when she gives it is not a performance. It is the real thing. Completely unfiltered, completely present, completely honest. That kind of access is rare in a world where everyone is performing all the time. And the people in her life who have experienced it know exactly how extraordinary it is. Let us talk for a moment about what society does with women who operate this way, because it is not always kind. There is a narrative in modern culture, especially online culture, that visibility equals confidence, that sharing equals openness, that putting yourself out there is a virtue and holding back is either insecurity or arrogance. And this narrative puts women in particular in a very specific kind of bind. If she posts, she is confident. If she does not post, something must be wrong with her. Either she is afraid of judgment or she thinks she is too good to engage. The culture does not leave much room for a third option. The option that she is simply choosing depth over breadth, presence over performance, quality over volume. And because this narrative exists, she has probably heard it. Someone has probably told her she should put herself out there more. Someone has probably implied that not being visible online is strange. Someone has probably made her feel, even briefly, like her choice was something to explain or justify. But here is what is fascinating about the female empath who does not post her photos. She usually does not take the bait. She does not get defensive. She does not launch into a lengthy explanation of her psychology and her choices. She just nods, or she smiles, or she changes the subject, because she already knows something the other person does not. She knows that the people who pressure you to be more visible are usually the ones who are most afraid of their own invisibility. And she has seen that movie enough times to know she does not need to sit through it again. Now, I want to address something that comes up frequently in conversations about empaths and social media. And it is the question of whether avoiding online visibility is actually healthy or whether it is a coping mechanism that needs to be examined. This is a fair question, and the honest answer is that it depends entirely on the internal state from which the choice is being made. There are women who do not post photos because they are afraid. They are afraid of judgment, afraid of being seen and found lacking, afraid of the attention itself. And for those women, the avoidance is driven by fear. And fear-based choices, even when they look like wisdom from the outside, tend to keep people small over time. But the female empath who has done the internal work, who has sat with herself and her patterns and her reactions and understands her own wiring, she is not operating from fear. She is operating from clarity. The difference is internal. The difference is whether the choice feels like running away from something or like moving towards something. The empath who is at peace with her choice is moving toward depth, toward integrity, toward a way of living that honors her own nature. She is not hiding, she is curating. She is not afraid, she is intentional. And that distinction, though it can look the same from the outside, is everything. If she is the one you are thinking of right now, the woman in your life who shows up fully for people, who listens in a way that makes you feel seen, who seems to understand things about you that you never said out loud, but who keeps her face off the internet, I want to offer you a reframe. She is not withholding. She is protecting what is sacred. She is not hiding from the world. She is refusing to be consumed by it. She is not insecure about how she looks. She is secure enough in who she is to not need the world's confirmation. And that level of security in a culture that runs on external validation is one of the rarest things you will ever encounter. There is also something important to understand about how she relates to her own image, because this is another layer that most people miss entirely. She is not disconnected from her body or her appearance. She is not trying to be invisible or to deny that she has a physical presence. In fact, many female empaths have a complicated and deeply rich relationship with their own image precisely because they are so sensitively attuned to energy and perception. They know that their image carries information. They know that how they look communicates things before they say a single word. And they are very aware of the gap between how they look and who they actually are. She has probably had the experience of people being surprised by her, of someone meeting her in person and saying, "You are completely different than I expected." And she knows what they mean. They expected whatever they had projected onto the image they had of her. And then they met her and the projection dissolved. And what was left was something more complicated and more interesting and more real. And she knows that the real thing is always better than the projection. So she is not keeping her photos offline because she is ashamed of her appearance. She is keeping them offline because she is protective of the experience of actually meeting her. She wants you to encounter her in reality, not in the story you told yourself about her based on a few filtered images. She wants the real thing to be the first thing, not the second. This is actually one of the most quietly radical positions a person can take in the age of social media, where everyone leads with the image and then tries to fill in the person afterward, where the performance comes first and the reality comes later, if at all. She has reversed that order entirely. And the result is that every real encounter she has is more powerful, more resonant, more true. Let us talk about what it is like to be in a relationship with her or to be her close friend, because this is where the full picture of her psychology really becomes visible. She is one of the most present people you will ever know. Not present in the way that someone performs presence, the checking in, the status updates, the constant pings. Present in the way that when she is with you, she is completely with you. Her attention does not drift. Her energy does not divide itself between the room and her phone. She is not thinking about the caption she is going to write later. She is just there, fully, without reservation. And because she absorbs so much from the people she is with, the experience of being with her is unlike almost anything else. You feel it. Something shifts in the quality of the air when she is genuinely present with you. Conversations go deeper, faster. Silences feel comfortable rather than awkward. You find yourself saying things you did not plan to say, things that were true but buried, things that she somehow made space for just by being there. This is the gift of her wiring, and it is inseparable from everything else about her. The sensitivity that makes social media overwhelming is the same sensitivity that makes her presence extraordinary. The depth that makes her guard her image carefully is the same depth that makes her love fiercely and honestly when she lets someone in. You cannot separate the parts of her that seem like limitations from the parts that are unmistakably gifts. They are the same thing expressed in different directions. And here is the final piece, the one that ties everything together. The female empath who keeps her photos offline is not just operating from personal preference or personal psychology. She is, whether she knows it or not, participating in a quiet revolution against one of the most pervasive and damaging dynamics of our current moment. We live in a time where visibility has been mistaken for value, where the number of people who have seen your face is treated as a measure of your worth, where performance has replaced presence and image has replaced identity. And most people are caught up in that dynamic so deeply that they cannot even see it as a dynamic. They just think that is what life is now. But she is not caught in it. And by not being caught in it, she is demonstrating through her actual life and choices that there is another way to exist. That you can be deeply connected without being publicly visible. That you can have extraordinary impact on the people around you without ever broadcasting yourself to strangers. That the quality of how you show up in a room matters more than the quantity of people who have seen your face on a screen. She is living proof that the most powerful presence does not require performance, that the deepest knowing does not require display, that the most real and lasting connections happen in the space between people, not in the space between a person and their audience. And maybe that is the most important thing I can leave you with today. Whether you are someone who is trying to understand a woman like this in your life, or whether you are a woman like this trying to understand yourself, the through line is the same. Her choice to stay visually private is not a mystery to be solved. It is a coherence to be respected. Every piece of it makes sense when you understand the whole. The sensitivity, the depth, the need for real connection over performative connection, the protection of her own internal clarity, the filtering system that ensures the people who reach her actually deserve to. She is not less than the women who post every day. She is not more than them either. She is different in a way that the current cultural framework does not have good language for yet. But the world is starting to notice that silence has its own kind of power. That invisibility chosen intentionally can be one of the most visible things a person does. She knows who she is. She knows what she carries. She knows the difference between being seen and being known. And she has decided quietly, without needing your approval, that she is only interested in the latter. And that in a world that is screaming to be noticed, is one of the bravest things a human being can.